So hi everyone, I thought that this week I would do something that I haven't done before. I thought that as opposed to writing down everything that's been happening this week, I would talk about it instead. So on the Monday at 9:30, in the first lesson of the day, I planned to get my first remix done, which was an ABBA song. And I just had to check that my two different sounds on the drums were really good, and they were. So I handed it in and I was really happy with the final sound. And then it was on to our final session for the short scene from the South Britain Adele musical with my two really nice actors. So we got in there, I gave him a phone call and he asked me where I was, and I was just upstairs waiting for the pair of them, and literally just as I was on the phone to him, she came up as well, so that was really great, and then he followed suit. Then we came into the studio and it was all set up while they were just having the final little rehearsal of the short scene in the middle where they had to speak while the song was playing. Last week they hadn't quite hit it on time. And the first time, even on that day, they didn't hit it on time, but they did the second time, so they felt really ready that they could go on with it at that point. And then as it started to record, for some reason it felt quite faint. The sound, the actual background noise of the music felt quite faint. But then I mouthed over to Gemma, I did a little thumbs up to check that she was okay with that, and she was. And I was really happy with the way they did it. Loved her voice as always, and I loved the way that he said his lines. And I couldn't believe the amount of people who didn't read and follow stage directions, and he did to the bone, so I was really happy with that. But then as soon as it started to play back, it seemed to play back in a really faint way as well. And I didn't really know why that was until we worked out that it was because the actual input sound on Logic was on as opposed to off. And then, so I went back to Martin's room because I put it on my stick, and then I went back to Martin's room to start to mix and master it. And for some reason, the first line that Zarif said, which was "no friends," for some reason that didn't come out in the final recording. But even then the sound was fairly faint, and I changed the actual noise, the actual sound on Logic Pro X to a sound in the orchestra section, and it started to sound at a normal volume, which I thought was okay. But then after lunch I go into Richie's lesson, and somehow that's not happening. It sounds really faint again, and I asked Richie, I got him over to ask him what he thought the issue was. And this is a man who has written a book about how to work Logic Pro X, and even he didn't know what the problem was. So that's when I started to panic and think, oh God, I have to record it again, I don't want to record it again. But thankfully, it was actually a fairly simple problem. Now, most people, the first thing they do, if it had worked next door but not there, they would check to make sure the headphones were working. Not me. Thankfully, we checked the headphones were working, and that was all good. So that was a temporary panic ending. And then at that point, I started to think about how I was to make all of my tracks something that a young audience would want to hear. Because I think Asperger's itself is quite a dark, deep thing. And the two other remixes that I was doing were by artists that were a little bit older. So I had to find a way to make a young listener want to listen. And I thought a big part of that was down to my marketing and how I look myself. So that's why on my Wix website you have to have an image of some sort. And I'd picked a picture from when I had gone to my friend Hussein's house in 2014. And I thought to myself that I liked it because I was wearing a hoodie, and I was also wearing a football top, which is fairly similar to what I'm wearing now. I thought that could be really good, especially for a younger audience, because that's the type of thing, and they are the type of people that they tend to hang out with, who wear stuff like that, who they know, who they like. So I thought that could be a really good way to make myself seem like a part of them, so that they'll want to listen to me more. But then I tried to find pictures that showed this actual badge in much more of an obvious way, because in the picture I'd chosen, I think about half of it like this was sort of hidden. So I went through some of my old photographs from 2014 from times when I met a singer-songwriter that I was a fan of at the time. And any time I met him, I would always wear that. And I went through it, but if I'm honest, I was a little bit self-aware. So I thought that I'd stick with the picture that I had initially chosen, because I think it's still obvious to tell what the shirt is, even though this is slightly hard. And then I started to think, what actual colour would I like my songs, the actual heading of my songs to be on my Wix account? Because I thought initially that they would either be all white, but then I have a backdrop which is a little bit dark there, light there, and then it goes back to being darker at the bottom. So as soon as I tried white, it was too light for a section of the picture. Then as soon as I chose another colour which was not quite as forceful and not quite as light, it was the same sort of issue. But then I thought to myself, each song can symbolise something different, and I think that whatever colour I choose for that song should also be the same. So for my Adele remix, I chose something that I thought symbolised hope and symbolised something that you want, that you really want to work towards, because that's what that often symbolises, and that's the theme that I wanted to portray in what I'd done with the track. And then I chose I Would Do Anything for Love to be red, because both that song and Meatloaf as a whole was all about fire and lust, which is what red is all about. And then for my other remix, I chose a white colour because I thought it symbolised innocence and carefree type of emotions, which is what you do as soon as you're in a situation where you just want to dance. So on the Tuesday, I really thought that could be a good time to get done a lot of the sound work in terms of having to cut out some of the background noise and try and make it sound more like a general flow to get the bulk of all of the editing done. So I started by attempting to look out for where there was background noise in the track, and as I was listening to it, thankfully most of the background noise, if not all of the background noise, was when there was no actual lines being said by either one of the actors. So it was really easy for me to then use the scissors tool in the software of Logic to cut out those noises. It made that in the middle of some of the audio tracks, it made a clicking sound when it started and ended, which made it really obvious that it had been edited in that way. So I thought that would be something that I would have to fix, and I did this by just enlarging the sound of the audio track just a tiny bit, but not so that you hear some of the sound that you heard at the start, like some of the lines that you'd already heard before. That sort of worked a little bit, but there was still some gaps. So what I thought I'd do in the end was have gaps, such as when Zarif said lines like, but then here I am, here is my love that was taken from me, and the line that he had to say when he compared Asperger's to hold its strings and bang. And then I did that, and I was still a bit concerned, but I thought I could, but then I had a plan to get either Martin or Richie to listen to it in either that day or the next day to see how it was. And then the only other two things I had to do was sort out if I was going to have the initial effect I wanted, which was just before the song started. I think it was Zarif's last line before the song. But as I listened to it, I felt like it didn't really fit it, and my aim has always been to make this whole story as authentic as it could be. So I think that by having a sound effect could have actually taken some of that away, and that just having a powerful line said by an actor who was really good, I thought that was enough on its own. And then the last thing I did on that day was sort out the Gene Hunt sound effect where he has to tap his head. I couldn't find that sound effect anywhere else, so I really did want to find a way to include it, and I felt like I would have to include some of the background noise because it would be virtually impossible to get rid of. But when I used the EQ effect on Logic, I found that the red section that I'd used to really make the background noise softer, I found a really nice level to the point where you could still hear the actual sound of this. You could hear the background noise, but it was actually nowhere near overpowering like I thought it would be. That was really, really good. And actually, when I listened to it back, I thought it was quite cool to have that southern background noise. I'd never thought of it before. I didn't think it would work. But I do think that it added a bit of a moment to the scene and even more of a darkness to the scene. So on the Wednesday, I had hoped that I would get done all of my final tracks and that I would show my teacher Richie and that he would think that they were fine to have as my lasting versions too. But then unfortunately, we were only told on the day that we had to go downstairs to take part in another session that had been organised by Sasha and another teacher. So therefore each and every one of us had to adapt. I said to Richie that if I bounced my tracks down, could he have a listen whilst we were downstairs and tell me what he thought, and he said that that was fine. So that's what I did. I sent him the tracks in the 15-minute break that we had, but then I didn't see him again until 1:30. And then when I saw him, thankfully, he said that the Adele musical was good. He said that it would be fine as a final version, and he said that there wasn't any sort of overwhelming noise in the background that might have hindered it, because that's something that I thought might have been an issue. So that was great, but the one thing he did say, he said that he wanted me to sort of experiment. He said that the one that we had put on there a couple of days ago sort of made it sound like we had done it in more of a tinier space, which he didn't really want. So I came up with a reverb that had much more of an echo sound to it, which I thought was really good because it made it sound like it was in a live theatre. And even though what I had done actually wasn't a live version, I still thought that it would be good to have those effects, both for the effect of the voices and also because it gave a sort of theatre type sound that I thought was really good. So I then asked Richie if he could listen to that, but he said that he had to teach another lesson, which was fine. But he said to me that it was fine even if we worked on it for the first few days after half term, and he could have a listen to the tracks over half term. So that's what I did, and then I started to work on my I Would Do Anything for Love track. And I thought about, because I hadn't added too many effects to it, so I thought that I might sort of experiment a little bit, but I didn't really use any because I thought that I wanted to keep it very authentic and normal, and I thought that by having too many effects could take away some of its feel-good emotion. But the one thing that I did do was I took away a part of the opening sound on the instrument because I felt like it had a sort of irritating effect that sounded like someone was doing this, which I thought would take away the main sort of part of that sound. So I did that, and then I thought I was happy with it, so I took it and I gave it a bounce and I put it on my Wix website. But then both there in that lesson, and then when I was listening to it later on at home, I felt like there was a hissing sound, which I didn't know why. So I didn't know at that point if it was something that I needed to fix, or if it was something that, because I had already sort of overly stressed earlier about having noise in the background and it turned out that it was fine, I then wondered if it was anything that it was just me sort of overly noticing. And I'm really pleased to say that this week I stuck to my 10-week plan. I had planned to get done all of my final tracks and to put them on my Wix website, and so I did get done both of my remixes and a finished version of my Adele song. And I guess that the fact that my teacher Richie told me that that version would be fine as a final track, that sort of shows to me that I did meet my plan for this week, because even though he still did want to work on it for the last week we came back after half term, I did still have a track that if the sort of experimentation didn't really work, I had something that was fine to use as my last track.